You're listening to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, the show that proves no one stumbles upon success ever. With your host, Lou Need. Every Mondays and Thursdays, we deliver cold hard evidence behind the power of a robust morning routine. Get ready to be transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Hello, morning enthusiasts. Welcome to the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast. I am your host, Lou Need, and today I have the honor and privilege of introducing a phenomenal guest to the show, Eric Rosenberg. Eric is a side hustle turned full-time success story. He is an MBA educated go-to resource for all things money and entrepreneurship. He will teach us today how to get profitable. He has been featured in Business Insider, Forbes. Eric started a little side hustle blog in 2008, the peak of the recession. And he later left his full-time job as a senior financial analyst to run his side hustle into a full-time gig. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Good to have you on board. Today, we will discuss small business bookkeeping, side hustle to full-blown entrepreneurship. Go ahead, Eric. Why don't you start off by telling us, how did you transition your side hustle to a full-time job?
Sure. That's a great question, a great starting place. So I imagine a lot of you listeners out there are side hustlers. So I came from a very, very similar background. I remember when I got my first ad on my website, it was just a little blog spot website on Blogger because I didn't know a whole lot about online marketing yet. And I got a $5 ad. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I can go buy a beer with the money I made on the internet today. What a great day. And over years, I learned a lot about it. So there were a lot of different steps along the way that took me from $5 here and there to be able to pay for my whole life online. Yeah. So the big steps along the way for me really involved community and learning from other people, from what they've done well, from what isn't working from them. So as I was building this little personal finance blog, I actually started it because I was reading other personal finance blogs and I was inspired. And along the way, I got involved in a community called the Yakezee, which is still around. It's not as active as it used to be, but I learned from there a lot about online advertising and how to sell sponsored posts and things that I don't really do anymore because Google frowns upon them. But at that time, they were very lucrative and they helped me grow my business. And I hit a point that I was probably, about 2 years into doing this whole online work thing as a side hustle. And this new financial blogger conference was coming up. And I said to myself, all right, if I make enough money on the side to pay to go to that conference, I'm going to go. Mm-hmm. And I did, and I bought a plane ticket to Chicago. I think I was 22 or 23. I hadn't ever traveled for work before, so it was a big new adventure for me. And I am so glad I went on that trip. I'm actually getting ready in about 2 months for my 9th or 10th trip to that same financial blogger conference. It's now called FinCon. But at FinCon, I learned a lot about taking that side hustle that I was treating like a business, but really turn it into a business with a cash generation engine and a focus on profits, things I was learning in my education. I have a background as both an accountant and financial analyst. So I have some serious finance chops behind me. But by taking all of those different things and piecing it together, I was able to start really seeing my income grow. And one of the biggest things that I did, my probably number one tip for anybody, was focusing on what was working well in my business. Mm-hmm. So when I was looking at my blog and my online income and I started doing some freelance work, I was doing some website development because I'd picked that skill up along the way building my own websites and started doing some freelance writing. And I was looking at my books and I realized that I was making so much more per hour of work doing the freelance writing than anything else. So I started to really focus there. And in 2015, I did $40,000 in revenue on the side outside of my day job. And I thought, wow, if I can make as much as the average person in my city makes in a year. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time. I thought, wow, if I can make what people that have a full-time job make $40,000 a year. If I could do that on the side, imagine what would happen if I took that full time. So like any good responsible dad with a 6-month-old baby and a stay-at-home mom wife, decided to sell my house and move to the most expensive part of the country and quit my job.
Very typical thing to do.
Later. Yeah, so it was a big risk. But because I had had that $40,000 a year the year before, it was a lot less of a risk. And I had a good landing pad when I took the leap to full-time self-employment.
Wow. That is a fascinating story. And it stirs up hope in everyone, for wanting to take a side hustle to full-time. Now you have the blog. And so freelance writing, is that, separate from the blog?
So it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. The freelance writing started because of the blog, but now the writing actually makes probably 95% of my income. So I wouldn't have the freelancing if I hadn't had the blog first. I didn't start the blog thinking I was going to become a freelancer. That just kind of happened, and I embraced what was working. As I said, find what's working in your business, just keep repeating it again and again. So while I wasn't expecting to be a freelancer, because I was going to that conference, FinCon, every year, big companies started to find me and say, hey, we like your writing. Would you write for our site? We'll pay you. And I thought, well, heck yeah, pay me. I'll write whatever you want. That sounds wonderful. So that's how I ended up here.
And you're writing on these companies' website, specifically around financial needs.
Yes. So my main topics I'm writing around are personal finance and entrepreneurial type topics. So for personal finance, it's things like bank accounts and credit cards and loans and insurance and just managing all those day-to-day things you need to do with your money that they probably didn't teach you in school but should have. And then on the other side, with that background, I have 2 finance degrees. I have a decade of corporate finance experience, digging deep in different product lines up to multi-billion-dollar products. So I've had that huge corporate experience as well. And that allows me to write for small and growing businesses. And I've even done some white papers for CFOs and accounting professionals based on the knowledge I built along the way in my old career sitting in a gray cubicle.
That's fantastic. Now, I know you have your own course along the side with the blog and a podcast, and it talks about personal profitability.
Yes, that's right. And my website is called Personal Profitability. I have a free personal profitability boot camp. That's a week-long series. I'll let you guys know about it at the end. That's where to find that. But it all came out of this idea of personal profitability. So how that name came to be, it's funny. My blog, when I started it, I actually called it Narrow Bridge Finance, it comes from a Jewish song. So it's very meaningful to me, but it doesn't mean that much to that many other people. And at work, I was doing something when I had the day job called product profitability. And what that was doing is I was working at a big company, made billions of dollars a year. And I would look at specific product lines and tell the managers of those, here's what your revenue looks like. Here's what your expenses look like. I'd put together reports that were more or less financial statements like you'd see for a company if you were going to go buy a stock. But I was doing that for different products. So I was working on that product profitability, and it was one of those moments. I always have my light bulb moments when I'm standing in the shower for some reason, when I'm off my phone. That's the only place I'm away from a screen when I'm in the shower. So I was sitting in the shower and I was thinking, wow, product profitability, personal profitability. And it just hit me one day, and I ran downstairs dripping wet to my wife to say, I know I've had this website for 5 or 6 years, but I'm going to rename it. It's Personal Profitability.
And it's funny, the best ideas come when we're not searching for them.
You always be ready to take a note. I have a note-taking app on my phone. Some people like paper and pen, whatever works for you. If you have that great idea, write it down. Put
it by the bedside, because your subconscious mind is continuously working on your behalf. It's just you give it a question, right? You're pondering, what should I name this? And it goes to work. And then you don't know when the answer is going to come. So you got to be prepared to note it.
Totally.
Yeah. Now I'm going to pick your brain on some strategies. Now I know what you do, and I know how well knowledgeable you are about this. So I want to know, what some advice can you provide for small business bookkeeping? I know you did a blog on eData Quick, which is a low-cost solution for small business bookkeeping. Tell us about the tips that small business can do.
Yeah. So the biggest things for small business bookkeeping, and this is really, really important for side hustlers too. It might not feel like you have a business, but if you are making money, you have a business. And if you're located in the US like me, then the government wants to know about it for taxes. So it's not an option. You have to take good care to track your business finances. And you need to do that separate from your personal finances. And I don't care if you're in the US or anywhere else in the world, you should always track your business finances separately for a few reasons. So one, if you have local, state, or, national government taxes, you have to have records for that. But two, and I'd say this is more important because I don't know, maybe because this is what my job was for 10 years, but that financial detail that you have about your business should tell you what you need to do in the future. Like I said, focus on what's working in your business and repeat. Mm-hmm. For me, it was looking at my books. That's what told me what was working in my business. You can't just go with your gut and say, oh, well, it feels like this part of my business is what's going to work. So that's what I'm going to work on. I mean, that's fun and fine and all. If it's just a hobby and you're just trying to make a few dollars, that's okay. But if you really want it to go full time, or if you really want it to be the kind of business that changes your life, you have to treat it professionally and separate it from your personal books. So that means you need a business checking account, ideally. Mm-hmm. If you have a big enough business, maybe a savings account, probably even a business credit card as well, so that you have its own financial entities accounts set up. And then when you do any business, all of the money goes through those accounts, and that makes it so much easier to track everything in your books. So if you use something like QuickBooks or Xero, I was actually just at a conference for Xero. That's spelled Xero. It's from Australia, big international bookkeeping company. QuickBooks, of course, that's, I think, the biggest one in the world at what they do. That's the one I use myself. But either one of those will link to your bank accounts. And there's another one I'll mention too. It's called Wave Accounting, WAVE. That one's free to use. So if you hook any of those accounting programs to your bank accounts and credit cards and things like that, every time you make a transaction, it will just show up in your books. And all you have to do is categorize it. And then based on those category results, you should do that at least once a month. You can jump back in and take a look at your books and say, hey, that last month I spent too much on this part of my business, or I need to do more work on revenue in this part of my business. Whatever those results tell you, I mean, that's at the end of the day what it's all about. Business can be fun, but we're doing it to make money. Right. So have good books so if you're making money and how you are making money, so you can keep repeating that success.
Mm-hmm. And then focusing on what does work, because you need the data, you need the numbers to show you where most of the money is going towards.
Right. Like when I quit my job and went full time online after that story I was telling you earlier with the 6-month-old, we got down to California and I was working so hard, and I did about, 3, 4, 5 times the number of hours that I was doing compared to when I was a side hustle. So I expected my revenue would follow suit, but it was growing, but not the way I wanted it to, and not the way that it would have made sense to me. So I actually opened up QuickBooks, and I just got hit in the face by the numbers there. If you've ever heard of the 80-20 rule or Pareto's principle.
Focus on the 80% that makes up the 20.
Yeah. So what I saw is I was spending about 80% of my time, I was guessing, doing website development work. And I looked at my books, and that was about 15% of my revenue. Where writing, that was about 20%-ish of my time. And that was making 76% of my revenue. So it was almost exactly 80-20. It couldn't. And when I saw that, I thought, wow, obviously I'm spending my time the wrong way. So I actually took a big risk and just stopped doing all of the website development work. I emailed all my customers and said I was winding down over the next month or so. I stopped taking any new projects or new clients, and I put all of my efforts into the writing side of my business because that's what the numbers said to do. And at that point, it took about 3 months to triple my revenue. That's when I broke through $10,000 in 1 month for the first time. And I've made it every single month since, I think, except for 2. So that was a huge win and a huge success in my business, just looking at those numbers and following the trail to the gold.
Wow, that's very business savvy of you to take that risk and then just actually going in to see what the numbers are showing. And it was that you focus on that 20%. You focus on what was making you the most money, and you hit $100,000 a month. That's fantastic.
Or 10,000 a month.
10,000.
100,000 a year.
10,000. Okay. Yeah, that's
if I hit 100,000 a month, I don't know if I'd be doing a podcast. I'd probably be sitting on the beach drinking a pina colada or margarita.
You would get right back to work because you're doing
You're
it because
right.
you care about it.
If you have that entrepreneur gene, that bug, once you get it, you can't stop. I joke with people that I trip over business ideas. Like I'm just walking down the street every day. I might trip on something and be like, oh, I should invent an anti-trip device or something. I see businesses in everywhere I look. And for me, with that kind of mindset, the hardest part is staying focused and really just doing the one thing or the couple things that I'm doing really well and growing those rather than getting distracted by all the shiny objects around me. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you always probably have that bug. You can relate to that. So you stay focused. It's tough, but we have to stay focused. Otherwise, we can't grow those parts of our business that are working.
That is sound advice, Eric, because know your one thing and work on your one thing, like you did with the writing and the freelance. So you decided, okay, I'm going to weed off the website development because it's not bringing me as much money, but I want to focus on my one thing. And once you did that, everything else became unnecessary, right?
And I still do my own website development for my own projects just because I think it's fun, but I'm not doing it for other people or as a business anymore because it's not as profitable. And that's what personal profitability is all about. It's about staying profitable.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about financial risk and stock market. How do you get your feet wet in the stock market without the huge financial risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's such an important area for a lot of people to understand with their money. But because it's kind of scary and you see it in the movies and you hear stories about people losing money, a lot of people don't want to get involved in the stock market. And that is such a horrible loss for them. The stock market, I mean, right now it's at all-time highs as we're recording this. So that might not be the time that you want to just shovel all of your money in at the top because you know what they say, buy low, sell high.
Yeah.
And we're high right now. But
I think it dropped 1,000.
Yesterday when we recorded this was the biggest drop in 2019 so far, one of the biggest drops in a while. But when I look at that, so to take a step back, let's look at this from the 40,000 foot view instead of getting in the details. So the stock market overall, over time, if you look at a long enough period of time, has always gone up. If you look at individual stocks, you could pick out one company, they'll go up and down a lot. And there's a lot of good stories. We could talk about Amazon or Microsoft or Apple making tons of money. There's a lot of bad stories too. Sears or Enron or WorldCom. There's all these bad stories. So what I tell most people to do and what I do with most of my assets and my kids' college savings and my retirement money and what I'm helping my sister-in-law set up for her money and what I've done for my sister is the exact same thing, more or less, that Warren Buffett says that you should do. I figure he knows what he's doing. He gives good advice. That's some advice I like to follow. And the basic idea of what he said, which if you look at the numbers, it all makes sense. If you invest in, let's say, the S&P 500, that is the 500 biggest companies in the United States that are publicly traded in the stock market. So you can buy an index fund, which is like buying a stock, except when you buy that fund, you're buying little slices of the 500 companies in the S&P 500. And there's other indexes too. The S&P 500 is my favorite and probably the biggest index. So rather than, let's say, how much money would you need to save? If you had $500,000, you could buy $1,000 each of those 500 stocks. But if you only have $1,000, which most people are probably more likely to have 1,000 than 500,000, you're not going to be able to buy 500 stocks at once. You can't buy $2 of each stock or something like that. So instead, you can buy an index fund, which, again, the S&P 500 as an example, would give you that $1,000 cut up into 500 different pieces of those companies. So yeah, there's a good chance one is going to do really well and one is going to do really bad, but it doesn't matter if one company has a huge day, because that's just one little piece of the 500 companies you would own in that portfolio. So what Warren Buffett said to do one time, he was asked, if you were to pass away today, how would you want your massive fortune invested for your wife? He said he would put about 80% in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund and about 20% in short-term government bond funds, or a mix of bond funds. Because bonds, typically, if the stock market goes up, bonds go down. And if the stock market goes down, bonds go up. So that's called a hedge. It's something to offset a little bit of risk in your portfolio. Yeah. But if you do that, you can buy two things. So it'd be like just buying two stocks, except instead of buying stocks, you're buying two index funds. So that means that $1,000, let's say you want to get started with, or even $100 you want to get started with in the stock market, you have it so diversified that, yes, of course, it'll go up and down with the market as a whole. But over time, if you look at the S&P 500 over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it averages about a 10% gain per year. So if you buy one stock, your whole portfolio is just in that stock. If that company does well, you're going to do well. If they do bad, you're going to do bad. But with a diverse portfolio like the one I just described, with the S&P 500 portion and the bond portion, it doesn't matter if one company goes up or down. And even if all of the companies go up or down, it doesn't really matter in the short term. Always keep a long-term focus when you're looking at your portfolio, because you're not probably going to retire tomorrow or even in 5 years. But if you're going to retire in 10, 20, 30 years, that's the time you want to look at for your portfolio. So ignore the day-to-day. Don't buy single stocks that are going to be super volatile. Instead, get a low-cost, diverse portfolio, probably made of low-cost index funds, and that'll help you get a lot of the risk out and a lot of the volatility out of your portfolio, so you can just focus on that long-term success.
Yeah, if you want to get your feet wet, that would be the best way to do it, is to diversify your portfolio, because the day-to-day stock market changes and trading is time-consuming.
Yeah, and if let's say I have a stock I bought, I'll just make up a stock. Let's call it X company. So I buy X company stock. Let's say it goes down 20% the next month. A lot of people would freak out and sell. But why did that company go down 20%? And if you wait another 3, 4, 5 months, will it come back that 20% and then some? And do you really care what the stock price is in 6 months, or do you really care what it is in 5 years or 10 years? So again, for me, I'm very long-term focused. I'm not going to retire for a while. I'm just in my mid-30s. So I don't need my money next year. I don't care if the stock market crashes tomorrow. When I see a really bad day, I look at that as an opportunity to buy more, because that is that buying low opportunity, because it should go up in the future. So in the long term, you'll have that gain.
Yeah. And the great way to learn about all this, Eric, is to actually get started, is to get an app to, if you don't want to start off big and paying tons of money and risking everything, is starting with Robinhood or Betterment, one of these platforms that will actually walk you through it. And you can learn along the way as you invest, and you start investing small.
Oh, yeah, Betterment's great. Actually, they were one of my first clients I wrote for as a freelance writing company. And they just do a great job at making investing simple and take a lot of the fear and questions out. Your Robinhood that you mentioned is great because they have free trades. You can buy and sell stocks and index funds without paying any commissions or fees. And there's a new one called Webull that is similar to Robinhood with no commissions. So you can buy that S&P 500 index fund with just $10 even and get started. You don't need a lot of money to get started in the stock market. You really don't. And just let it grow from there.
Yeah. And I thought it was worth mentioning, because a lot of people get scared by this, right? Oh, I don't want to trade it. The stock market is too big. It's too much. But in reality, just starting small, starting with an app. I started with both of them. I actually have Betterment for retirement. I have Robinhood that I'm trading with. And it gets easier. It's daunting at first, but as you get your feet wet, you start learning and you realize, oh, okay, I lost this amount of money. It's not too much. Okay, I can I can invest in that, or look at the companies that you're investing, because it's good to be to not just be a consumer, but actually get start investing in some of these companies, get some stocks.
Yeah, there's this great saying. There's a quote. It was said that Albert Einstein said this, but he actually didn't really say it. We don't know who said it. The quote is that compound interest is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Those who don't understand it pay it, and those who do understand it earn it. And that is exactly what you just described. If you get in a bunch of debt, you have a bunch of credit cards, you're going to be paying a ton of interest, and it's horrible. But if you build up assets and stocks and build up that portfolio like you were just describing, you start getting that interest and start earning those compound returns. And that is how wealthy people really stay and get wealthy. It's through building, compounding, continuing returns, and just repeating it again and again and again.
Yeah. And I think he said uninterrupted compound, where you just continuously building that, because if you have cash, you are not gaining any interest on it.
There's a concept, it's called dollar cost averaging. And I actually don't really love the concept, but I love the actions behind it. So the idea is that it doesn't matter if the stock market is having a good day or a bad day, you should regularly contribute to your accounts. So if you have a 401k from an employer, or an IRA or a Roth IRA if you're self-employed, you should be contributing regularly. Most experts would say about 10 to 15% of your pre-tax income at minimum. If you just keep investing that a little bit at a time every payday over your career, you should wind up in great shape at the end.
For retirement. Yes, absolutely. Now we're talking about retirement. When is a good time to get life insurance? Because I'm 34 years old and you're in your mid 30s as well. And I have no kids. When is a good time to get life insurance?
See, we're exactly the same age. I'm 34 also. So the best time to get life insurance is right now. I'd say to most people, the sooner the better. So the one thing with life insurance that a lot of people don't realize is that the cost will always go up over time, more or less. And that's because the older you are, the closer you are to dying. And life insurance is insurance that will pay out if you die. So the number one greatest risk factor, I would guess, for death is being older. So the younger you are when you get insurance, the less you're going to pay per month. So I've got my life insurance that I have now. I have $1 million policy. I think I got it 6 years ago. And my oldest kid is 3.5. So if you do the math, I did not have kids yet when I got my life insurance. And the reason I picked that moment, I looked at myself and I thought, well, I'm as healthy as I'm ever probably going to be. Generally, people have health conditions come up over time. They don't go away. And as more health conditions come up, your cost of insurance goes up. And then you get older over time. So again, your cost of insurance goes up. So the younger and healthier you are, when you can lock in your life insurance rate, the better. So that $1 million policy I got the second best rate tier. There's, I think, about half a dozen rate tiers that the insurance company that I picked uses. So I got the second best rate. So I pay about $70 a month.
Wow.
And, that might seem like a lot, $70 a month that I hopefully will never get anything back from. But if something happens to me, my wife and kids will get $1 million payout, and that can, pay off our house and make sure that, they're not homeless, poor, or without clothes or hungry. And that's what life insurance is about. So even if you don't have a family yet, if you ever plan to in the future, get life insurance right now if you can afford it, because this will be the cheapest time for you.
And what happens when you do get married and have kids? How does the policy changes over time?
So the policy actually doesn't change. What's cool about life insurance, I'm speaking mostly about term life insurance. There are other types of life insurance as well.
Universal. Yeah.
Yes, there's all these, whole life or universal life. You'll pay a lot more per month, but with those, you are guaranteed to get something back at the end. But what they try to do there is they wrap up an investment product and an insurance product in one. and you end up paying more for both. Whereas with term life insurance, you'll pay less per month for just the insurance, and then you can do your investments separately. So that's what I do. That's what I recommend. So the only thing that should change with term life insurance if you get married is the beneficiary on the policy. So before I got married, I had the beneficiary on my policy as my little sister. Mm-hmm. So if I died, she has about $250,000 in student debt from medical school. So if something happened to me, her debt would be paid off and she would have that money for her life, which if anyone would have it before I was married, I'd want it to be her. Now that I'm married, I just updated my form so the beneficiary is my wife instead of my sister. And that's it. That's the only change I had to make. And if anything happens to me, God forbid,
you need to stop tripping over those ideas.
My wife and kids will get that money. But ideally, I will be around a very, very long time and won't get anything back. But that's what insurance is for. It's for just in case. Hopefully I won't need it, but if I do, it'll be good it's here.
Yeah, it's good insight that you broke it down and differentiate between universal and whole life and talked about the term life insurance, because I think there's a lot of confusion around that, because especially young millennials look at life insurance as, oh, I don't need it right now. I'm healthy. I'm not married. There's no need for it. And plus it's an expense. It's expensive. Yeah. I'd have to add it into my budget. But I myself didn't know that for term life, you're only just paying for the insurance and you can do your investments back in other ways, like you were talking about with investing in the stock, or you're getting into Betterment and Robinhood. That will actually lessen the cost for the life insurance policy.
Right. Yeah. With a term policy, so I got a 30-year policy when I was, like I said, I was about 28. So that means until I'm 38, 48, 58, 30 years, that policy is in place. And so with a term policy, you're paying a lot less, but that means what happens when I turn 58, the policy just goes away. So hopefully by the time I'm about 60, I will have saved enough that I won't need life insurance anymore anyway. At that point, I should have enough that I should be about to retire. So at that point, you shouldn't need life insurance anymore. Life insurance is to bridge that financial gap if something happens before you have enough savings to self-insure and cover your own costs for your future.
And there is no cash out of that term policy, but it would be something for universal or whole life.
Yeah. So if you have a whole life policy, your monthly cost will probably be 3, 4, 5 times higher. I mean, it'll be hundreds a month instead of under 100 a month, probably. Mm-hmm. But then, yes, at the end, let's say I turned 58. Yeah, the part that was insurance would be all gone, but the investment part I would still keep. The reason I'm not really a big fan of that whole lifestyle is because there's fees and all these things, and you don't choose your investments in that. So, well, yes, you are guaranteed to get something back. You'll probably get more back if you funnel your investments into a diverse stock market portfolio like we talked about earlier.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Great knowledge here. All right, Eric, tell us about to be somebody like yourself, to have the mental capacity that you do, to be so knowledgeable and having a side hustle and actually growing it into a full-time business and continue to do so successfully. You got to have habits in place. You got to have disciplines in place to actually help you to get up, dress up, and show up every day. Share with us what your morning routine is.
Sure. So I'm bad at getting dressed in the morning. I do try to. That is one thing. As a work-at-home freelancer, I work in my pajamas till lunch a lot.
I realize when I throw that in there, people tell me, let me share with you, I don't dress up. That's one thing I don't do.
But I do notice, like yesterday, I just threw clothes on and got dressed first thing in the morning, and I had a more productive day. So the people who say get dressed for work even if you don't go, I think there is something to it. I just have yet to adopt that one because my pajamas are really comfortable. But I do have some things I do every day that make me more productive, and I do them every morning. So one thing, I use this app called Fabulous. It's free to use. They have a paid upgrade version. It's $50. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't pay the $50. I use the free version. I'm a big fan of free versions of things. So personal finance, right? $50. Yeah. So Fabulous, I've set it up every morning at exactly 7:00 my time. It'll go ding and remind me a few things I need to do every morning. One of those things, I'd say the number one productivity hack, if you want to call it that I've added. I've tried like 50 different kinds of to-do lists. I've tried digital ones, handwritten ones, checkbox ones, pre-formatted ones, blank pieces of paper. Whatever works for you, just do it. I'd say that too. For me, what worked best was actually I found a Moleskine notebook that has a weekly planner. That's the best layout for me. But I've just write down every morning my entire to-do list, not just things I have to do today. I rewrite the entire list every single day, because if something is on my to-do list for 2 weeks, that means I've had to write it 10 times for 2 work weeks. If I have to write the same thing 10 times, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to get it done already. So by rewriting my list, I'm recommitting and refocusing. These are the things I have to get done. And then I try every day to write number 1, 2, and 3 next to the things that I absolutely have to get done first and want to get done that day. And if one of those top things is a huge project and I know I'm not going to get 3 things done, I'm okay just circling 1 and 2 or just 1. But by writing my whole list and then picking out these are my top priorities of the day at the beginning of every day, I know I'm going to hit that priority. I'm not going to miss that goal, where I used to just kind of figure it out as I went. So that focusing in the morning has been a big benefit for my business.
Using the planner, there's a very good quote by Earl Nightingale. It says, the minute you write down your goals, you are already successful, because you are now part of the 1% that knows where they're going. Yes,
I mean, that's totally right. I agree. If you don't write it down, if you don't know what you're working on, how are you ever going to get there?
And so you planning out the day, and you're up early. 7 a.m. is early for an entrepreneur who gets the opportunity to work from home. You early risers. I love early risers because you get a lot more done when the rest of the world is still trying to fumble out of bed.
I'd probably naturally be a little bit of a later riser, but with 2 little kids, they're up, so I'm up. I just learned if they're going to be up early, and I might as well just go to bed earlier and wake up more rested every morning. If you have little kids, they're going to wake up the same time no matter what. If you go to bed at 10 o'clock or 2 a.m., they're still going to wake up the same time. So think about going to bed a little earlier so you can get that good morning routine going.
Yeah. I'm curious, Eric, what are you reading? Because you spend a lot of time writing. You get your content. How do you feed your mind?
Also, I read a lot of articles. Those are probably my biggest reads. I wish I read more books, but at this time, chasing the kids around, I don't read as many as I'd like. I'm lucky if I get through 3 or 4 a year at this point. Right now, I'm reading one about real estate from Bigger Pockets, which I actually found the book because of the podcast and website Bigger Pockets. It's a great real estate resource. And for my investment plan, owning an investment property is part of the plan. So that's part of my future. So I'm reading more to learn more about that. But I love just getting out and reading anything can help grow your mind, even if it's fiction. Just the more you read, the more you can take in. I think it helps your vocabulary. You become a better speaker. It helps you think through scenarios, whether they're nonfiction or fiction, through someone else's shoes. And with those nonfiction books, you don't always just have to read business and investment and leadership and inspiring books, though those are good. Really try to get diverse and learn about as many things as you can. I just read a book about a zoo in Nebraska that failed. And yeah, there wasn't a ton of, they didn't talk about the stock market or anything like that in there, but there are business lessons. There are, societal lessons you can take from any story. So yeah, just get out there and keep reading. But I'd say if you want to read any if I have to give one suggestion of a favorite book for personal finance and money to read, it'd be The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach. I say if you can read that and follow that, then you're probably on track, even if you don't have an MBA like I do.
Yeah, very insightful. Thank you for sharing the books. I'm going to put some of them on my list to do some reading myself. So, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show. Morning Enthusiasts, you've heard it here first. And Eric talks about personal profitability, how to earn more money, how to spend it thoughtfully. It's how to grow your wealth and live a better life through mindful personal financing. And the nuggets that he shared today on QuickBooks and Xerox and Wave accounting on how to do the bookkeeping for the accounting for your businesses. Eric, thank you so much for sharing today. Tell us, how can we connect with you? Because you can teach a lot of listeners how to be profitable.
Definitely, yes. The easiest way to find me, if you just have a quick question or want to say hi, I'm on Twitter at Eric Profits. The best way to learn everything I have to share is at personalprofitability.com. I have a blog and podcast there that you can subscribe to. Before we go, I mentioned earlier I have a free course I'd love to give you guys just for hanging out and listening today. So if you go to personalprofitability.com/bootcamp, there's a free week-long course, no strings attached. Just drop your email there and you will get an email every morning for a week with lessons to get you started on your path to personal profitability.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that bootcamp course. I really appreciate it. My audience will love it.
Definitely.
Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right, morning enthusiasts, it's time to listen up. As you know, I am a big fan of books. I strongly believe you gotta feed your mind. I personally read over 50 books a year. How, you may ask? I listen. I listen to audiobooks, the quickest and fastest way to consume content. Audible and I are offering you a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/BMRever to get yours. It's that simple. Sign up and I will see you at the top of your best morning routine ever. Stay blessed.
All right, morning enthusiasts, that's it for today's show. Thank you for tuning in. If you love the Best Morning Routine Ever podcast, we'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes or Google Play. While you're at it, tell a friend about the show. Be sure to visit bestmorningroutineever.com and our Facebook group to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic free bonus content. Until next time,